All right. It is 12 o'clock and we're going to get started. Welcome, community members and friends. We are VVCU. I want to welcome also and thank the Captain Lou from Ingleside Station, the Assistant District Attorney, David Marin, as well as Supervisor Shaman Walton for joining us today. This meeting was requested by the various community leaders currently on this call to address the recent incident that took place in front of the 7-Eleven on Bayshore on November 1st last week. Originally, it was intended for the SFPD to provide neighbors with the most updates. However, in light of newspaper articles published a few days ago, findings of the perpetrator's past has come to light, and other agencies, specifically the DA's office, was then subsequently invited. Before we move on, I want to congratulate Supervisor Walton for the huge win last night. This can only mean improved public safety for D10, especially this valley, as we move forward with executing his public safety plan. Also, before I turn this over to Pastor Robert Cohen, the VVCU chair, I also want to remind the speakers to speak slowly, clearly, and pause occasionally, so our interpreter could translate it into Chinese, and I do believe we also have Spanish translation simultaneously. Okay, with that said, Pastor Cohen.
Good afternoon to everyone. I also want to echo my congratulations on the victory for our supervisor and for our DA, even though she's not on. Hopefully the assistant can convey our congratulations to her as well. My name is Robert Cowan. I am the pastor of River of Life, which is located at 1430 Sunnydale. And I am also part of Visitation Valley Community Unity, which is a group of Visitation Valley leaders coming together to increase Visitation Valley's voice and provide pathways to solutions to the various issues that come. So this town hall meeting is a good example of what we like to do, bringing people together, providing information, getting questions answered, and maybe moving forward with some good solutions. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Rex, who's going to host this meeting.
Great, thank you, Pastor Cohen. I will now, before I turn it over to Captain Lou, I'd like to see if the supervisor would like to say a few words before we can put Captain Lou and David Marin from the ADA's office on a panel. Supervisor Walton. Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Rex. One, just appreciate community coming together to have this meeting. I want to thank Captain Lou for being very responsive and making sure that we can all come together. Obviously, there are some things in community that we need to improve on when it comes to safety, and just want you all to know that the District 10 office is committed, the Ingleside precinct is committed, and we're going to continue to work together to improve safety. And this is, of course, one way that we do that, and just excited to continue to get to work. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Supervisor. So before we get started, how I learned about the incident is I actually passed by the location, and I saw a bunch of police cars and fire trucks. I thought originally it was a traffic accident that occurred once again on Bayshore. Unfortunately, I received a call from the captain 30 minutes after, informing me what had taken place, just to assure us that the perpetrator was apprehended, and the unfortunate news that there was also a homicide. So I won't take any thunder away from the captain, so I'm going to turn it over to him, and perhaps he could give us some updates and then shed some light as to kind of what happened, because unfortunately some folks are still wondering if there's any additional threats out into our community. So Captain Lou, welcome.
Thank you, Rex, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll start off with echoing everyone else. Congratulations, Supervisor. great win. I wanted to first off say, thank you to BBCU, Pastor Cowan, Rex, and I'm sure I'm forgetting folks, but thank you for putting this forum together with, language translation and just getting maximum ears on this because, I was at the scene. It was traumatic for all involved, community, police, and otherwise. So, I've heard a lot about the community being upset about this, and rightfully so. So I'm happy to come and at least either clarify or maybe confirm some things that may have already been put out there in the news. I apologize in advance. Number one, I probably won't be able to get into all the nitty gritty that folks may want to hear about. It is an active, ongoing investigation, even though we do have a suspect in custody. So I won't get into the details. And then secondly, I do have a lot of facts that I want to go over. So I'm going to try not to read, but you'll see me glancing down quite a bit. So apologize in advance for that. But with that, I'll kind of jump into it. I decided to kind of go about it and explain the situation from a perspective of how our officers responded to it and what we saw first, and then kind of how we started piecing things together. So it's coming from that perspective as opposed to the more traditional kind of timeline, just so that you could understand it the way we understood it. So I broke down into phases. I'll start with obviously the response phase. So at approximately 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday, November 1st, we received a 911 call regarding a battery or an assault in progress on the 2200 block of Bayshore. Came out as an A priority, and officers began their response in a Code 3 fashion. Code 3 fashion means that they're going lights and sirens and getting there as soon as they possibly can. When they first got there, they observed a victim that was suffering from life-threatening injury, and they simultaneously were waved down by witnesses who pointed out a possible suspect, who then immediately tried to flee from the officers that had arrived there. The officers engaged in a foot pursuit, and after a significant struggle, the officers were able to take the suspect into custody. Other officers that were arriving around the same time were simultaneously rendering aid to the victim, including providing CPR. They also called for paramedics. The way it works is paramedics can arrive there and they'll stage in an area, but until the scene is what we call Code 4 or made safe, they won't come in. So we rendered aid until paramedics were able to come in. Unfortunately, the victim, was a 73-year-old male, was pronounced deceased at the scene. So that's initially what we saw and how we responded, and what the officers saw upon getting there. It's very chaotic. The radio traffic was very complex, and what we soon found out was that it really, the crime scene kind of spanned at least a city block. So I'll move into the crime scene portion of it. So just my own personal opinion. I've been in the business about 20 years, and I have to say that it was one of the worst crime scenes I've been to. Just in terms of, it was gruesome. It was a very violent act. It was during rush hour. There were a lot of other victims that we had to kind of sift through. There were other witnesses, and there were just people that were trying to go to work, go to school, and all those things. So all those considerations on how we're going to deal with that particular scene. But after we took the suspect into custody, we kind of evolved into locating and really figuring out the span of the crime scene. So that's when we put up the crime scene tapes and understand where things happen. That's all based on a lot of obviously physical evidence, as well as witness statements and such. We went and searched for additional victims, additional witnesses, getting those folks medical care if necessary. And then we obviously did what we normally do, which is to look for the physical evidence, the video, and what you would expect on a preliminary investigation of a major incident. So what we finally pieced together was prior to our arrival, which generated an initial 911 call. The suspect, who was taken into custody, approached an initial victim at the bus stop located at Bayshore and Arleta and assaulted him randomly. The suspect then forced that victim up into the 7-Eleven store, where he came into contact with the clerk that was working there, who would eventually be the second victim. That second victim was assaulted and suffered serious but non-life-threatening injury. After a struggle and the physical fight at the store, the suspect eventually left and headed southbound on Bayshore towards Raymond, where he violently attacked the eventual homicide victim and where we initially contacted him. So at that point, we did what we needed to do to kind of isolate the scene. Got into the stuff with properly caring for the body, because it's still evidence, but at the same time, we're not trying to traumatize people. So, getting the blankets and the tents and all those things put in place. And then we moved into the investigations phase, where homicide detail, crime scene investigators took over an intensive follow-up of the greater investigation. All the interviews and pouring through video and combing for witnesses, talking to victims, and all of those things that a follow-up investigation entails. We have brought out resources from Bayview and the Terravelle over into the crime scene itself to help support, because it was fairly large scale, but then to also ensure that we could continue to answer 911 calls in a relatively quick time. And then lastly, the suspect was then, he was brought to the hospital. He was later arrested and charged. I won't go into the details really, but we put a number of charges on him, to include homicide, kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, resisting arrest, and just a litany of other charges. Aside from that, just general commentary about being there, and just the incident itself. I'd reiterate that, this scene for everyone involved, whether there's a witness, obviously the victims, goes without saying, the officers that responded there, the other first responders, it was a traumatic scene. It was not easy to deal with. I did want to point out that while this incident was a tragedy in every way, for it to unfold and kind of conclude the way it needed to conclude, in terms of having a suspect taken into custody, clearly, in my opinion, my officers did a great job, and they did what they needed to do, take him into custody. It was a violent arrest, but we could not have done it without the participation of community members that were willing to step up and give statements and point the person out. There's no way we could have done it. So it was one of those things where clearly we could not have done it if we weren't working hand in hand with the community at that time, in a moment of unbelievable stress. Other than that, I think that's kind of it for the incident in terms of the details. I'll leave it at that, and Rex, I'll put it back to you and see where you want to go with it.
Great. Thank you, Captain Liu. That was very good information. I'm sure there will be some questions from the audience and maybe other folks here. At this time, I do want to turn it over to Mr. Marin from the DA's office, if he wants to make a statement. Just to let you know, I haven't spoken with Mr. Marin at all prior to this, but as I made the comment earlier, there are things that the community has learned that this gentleman apparently had an open or a pending case against him for assaulting an officer. I don't know exactly when, but apparently it took place not too long ago. Some of the community members are just asking me why this violent gentleman was out in the street roaming around to further, obviously, unfortunately now, killed one of our community members. Mr. Merritt?
Yes, thank you, Rex, and good afternoon, everyone. Just want to introduce myself first. My name is David Marin. I'm Chief of the Criminal Division at the San Francisco DA's office. There are two chiefs of the Criminal Division that supervise the violent crime in San Francisco, and I was recently shifted from the homicide, child abuse, sexual assault, and domestic violence unit to I'm now Chief of General Crimes, which is felonies, misdemeanors, and the intake process of charging here in San Francisco. So I am in a somewhat a new role, but I've been in the office for over 20 years, so I'm very familiar with the processes and hopefully can answer whatever questions there are. Just picking up where Captain Liu left off in terms of the homicide, the case was charged, and obviously he was charged with one count of 187, which is murder, also elder abuse, related assault charges, and the next court date on that is November 14th. We have filed a motion to detain the defendant without bail so that he remains in custody during the pendency of that case. So that motion is on for November 14th. Now, I understand Rex did ask some questions about prior incidents involving this suspect, and I'm happy to answer all questions that you may have. I can provide a little bit of a timeline, hopefully, that can answer some questions in advance. So in September of 2020, the defendant, and I want everyone to know here that I'm only referring to things that are matters of public record. I cannot refer to anything that is investigative in nature, but only through documents that are public documents, such as criminal complaints. The names of victims on those complaints do appear. So I am very sensitive to victims' rights and to privacy. So I just want to put out there that everything that I'll be saying, I believe to be matters of public record. So in terms of a prior incident in September of 2020, there was a call for assistance, an individual that was described as not wearing a shirt and was bleeding from the head and attempting to jump over into the shoreline area, and apparently was contacted by the police. He was observed to be vomiting a gray substance and bleeding from the head. The responding officers contacted the individual that ended up being the defendant in this case, and he was detained, and it was during that detention that he punched a cadet or a training officer. Her name was Officer O'Shea, and he punched her, and this injury ended up causing a broken nose to her. So in September of 2020, that incident occurred. He was arrested for the felonious assault of the recruit officer, and the case was referred to the San Francisco DA's office for purposes of charging. We then reviewed the reports that were provided to us and charged essentially felonious assault on a peace officer. We also filed what is called a detention motion, which is a similar motion that we filed on the homicide. And the detention motion was that the defendant remain in custody during the pendency of the case. The other referral at the time of the detention was for what's called ACM assessment, which is assertive case management. Essentially, the pretrial diversion project in San Francisco, which supervises individuals who are eligible for release pretrial, they will assess an individual, assess their needs, and determine if, in their judgment, they are good candidates to be supervised by assertive case management. That referral occurred while the defendant was in custody. He remained in custody during the pendency of that referral. And about a week and a half to 2 weeks later, the ACM referral came back with a recommendation that he was to be released to a program, and this is back again still in, now we're talking about October of 2020. And thereafter, there were, after he was referred to a program, after his needs were assessed, the judge did order that he be supervised by assertive case management, and that he be referred in custody to that program. So after that, his supervision while on this is an alternative to an own recognizance or OR release. It is more intensive in nature, and it is suited towards identifying needs of its clients in order to return to court and to be safely released. The case was set for preliminary hearing, which is a hearing where the probable cause is established to determine if there was sufficient evidence to send the case to trial. That process was continued multiple times. This was now we're looking in November in late 2020. As I know we're all aware, there was a period of lockdown both in our courts and all of our lives where cases were not moving forward. But in any event, it was during that period of time that the defendant bench warranted and did not appear for court. And I believe his attorney attempted to add him back to the docket, and that process occurred a couple of times. Ultimately, he was referred again to a different program, which is a pretrial diversion, and this is for mental health diversion under 1001 of the Penal Code, which, with the exception of some carve-outs, could make many assaultive crimes and many theft crimes eligible for diversion, so long as there is a nexus to the mental health issues that are presented. So that referral happened in late October, and as we all know, November 1st is the date of this incident. So I'm hoping that timeline, I don't have all of the details, and what I've done is asked that some transcripts be prepared of court appearances, but those transcripts are still outstanding. I don't have those yet, but I just wanted to hopefully put that timeline out there, and I'm happy and pleased to take your questions. Again, I'm trying only to refer to matters that are that of public record that occurred in court on the public record. Please, Rex or others or Captain Lou, I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
Great, thank you, Mr. Moran, and thank you for that information. There is one question before I open it up, before I open the floor to everyone. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and Robert Cohen will unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, and you can ask, or he will call on your name, and then he can, and then you can unmute yourself. There is a question on the chat that was directed only to me, and it's for Mr. Marin. The incident in 2020, the first case that he caught, did that occur in our district, in District 10, Visitation Valley?
Yes, let me give you the location of that. You stand by, please.
Okay.
I have the 1300 unit block of Yosemite Avenue. And Ingalls, ultimately Ingalls and Armstrong was, I believe, where first contact was made with the defendant.
All right, thank you. So that is Bayview, and there's also a question from KTSF. They want to know if it's possible to share the surveillance footage at the 7-Eleven. So I don't want to answer for Captain Lou, but I bet you I know what his answer is. Generally, if there's surveillance video, law enforcement, especially early in investigation, while there are still investigative opportunities to be lost, are very cautious about what is released into the public domain. If the information or investigative leads could be developed from pieces of evidence that are not in
Hello, Anna.
then I think
佢哋係有問題嘅，就係關於點解佢哋嗰個。
Just 1 second.
I'm sorry for that. So hold on 1 second, Yanis. Could you hold your question? Thank you. All right, Mr. Marin. I apologize for that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. You can continue, Mr. Marin.
Was I muted for a portion of my explanation?
Yeah, I muted everybody briefly.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I think that there would be concern about releasing pieces of evidence, a law enforcement concern, both with the police department and with the Office of District Attorney. But I would, of course, defer to Captain Lou.
Thanks, Dave. No, that's right on the money. I wouldn't want to speak for homicide investigators, but the general rule of thumb, coming from investigations is certainly during an open investigation, which this still is, they won't release surveillance. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Captain. Thank you, Mr. Marin. Looks like there's a question from the seniors. I believe it's Yanis, you're translating for them. If you could unmute yourself, please. And then we're going to take James, iPad 2, right after.
Who's up first, you said, Rex?
It looks like somebody in the VVNA seniors room at APAC gym. There seems to be a handful of folks out there. But hey, Yanis, while you're trying to work that out, I'm going to go ahead and call on James for now. It says James, iPad 2. James, could you unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can now.
Okay. Well,
James, could you hold off, please? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is actually Fran.
Hello.
Fran Martin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Fran.
It's not exactly in the nature of a question, but I'm with the Biz Valley Greenway, and we've had several, near attacks over the years and real attacks from some people. One who's since been murdered.
Actually, Some senior has a question. They want to know
Oh.
why the man was the why the
Yanis,
suspect
Could you hold on?
released.
Could you hold
No,
on for a
go-
second,
let her
please?
go
We're
ahead.
actually.
Let her go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, she already
Okay, go
muted
ahead,
herself.
Yanis. Yeah, go ahead, unmute yourself again, Yanis. And ask the question.
This is not working out. So
I apologize for the technical difficulties here, but I tell you what, hey friend, we're gonna let you finish first, Yanis.
Okay.
I'm gonna call on you when just go ahead and mute yourself now so you're ready.
I'm going to mute her. Go ahead, Fran.
Okay. Anyway, I'm with the Viz Valley Greenway project and some other projects here in the valley. And over the years, we've had a real problem with people have mental illness and attacking us. I mean, I've been chased by someone who said he was going to hit me with a stick, and same person is throwing rocks at women with their children, blah, 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 the usual. The police come, take him away. He's back the next day. A woman started fires, jumped over a fence into a lady's house, and the police let her go. That afternoon, she was over at Mission Blue. So I feel like there's this sense of hopelessness. Like, I almost didn't come to this meeting because I don't know that we're getting the protection that we need. And I'm not blaming the people who are mentally, what's a better word? Well, I'll just say deranged. They're living in alternate universes. It's not their fault. You know, we should be taking care of them. Then we don't have to deal with these problems. That the man who killed that man, Richard Owens, was obviously someone who needed to be taken care of, and we're not doing our jobs. And I know a lot of people who are, they just feel a sense that things are out of control here and that the police are not helping us. And I know they can't be on every street corner every minute, you know, for a crime to happen, but still, if they can get to Paul Pelosi's house in 2 minutes, I mean, sometimes I've waited for hours. So, and I want them to be at Paul Pelosi's house. You know, I'm glad that happened, but I think that we deserve the same kind of care. I'm done.
Thank you, friend. We're gonna go back. Kelvin, are you ready for your questions?
Hold on. Before he answers, Mr. Marin or Captain Lou, do you want to respond to what she just said?
Yeah, Pastor, I can speak to what Fran had to say. I mean, I think there's a lot of things layered in there, but just kind of off the top of my head, in terms of mental health and what we deal with, you know, we do whatever we can in terms of if there's a 911 call for someone that's acting out that in whatever way that is, you know, affecting public safety, we try our best to get out there and do what we can. If it turns into what we call a 5150 detention, which means a mental health detention, we essentially bring that person over to the psych emergency services over at SFGH, and we kind of do a handoff. And this isn't to say that to throw anyone under the bus. It's just our job kind of ends when we leave folks with the psych emergency services. They'll make their assessments and they'll extend holds if they deem necessary. So that's kind of maybe why you see, hey, the cops took this person away and they're right back out there. Once we do a drop off, we're kind of done with that particular issue. But we do also have another unit. It's called a crisis intervention team, which we work with closely. I have an officer or two over here that kind of keep tabs on our, I'll just say, crisis intervention, mental health frequent flyers. We do get a lot of repeats. And so those officers kind of collate those stats, collate those incidents, and get them over to our CIT folks, who then work in partnership with DPH to try to manage that on a more proactive basis. So that does go on. As far as, I think you mentioned you having to wait and, relative to Paul Pelosi and these types of things. I mean, it's really hard to say. I'm not discounting that you did have to wait. I think that it's also an understanding of how our 911 call system works and how calls are prioritized. I won't go into super detail. I know there's a lot of questions and a lot of speakers here, but just in a nutshell, when you call 911 and articulate why you need the police there, everything is prioritized by dispatch as to whether it's an A, B, or C run. An A run is lights and sirens, just like this incident that we spoke to earlier. We were there in minutes. It's a function of where our officers at the time are they responding from a distance? Are they responding from another run? Are we tied up on something else? We have to break people. So there's a lot that goes into the calculus as to how quickly we get somewhere. We then have B priorities, which are obviously not quite as serious as A's. They don't reach the level of an A, and so the response is a little bit less. And then C priorities are really what we call cold reports, where there's no threat, no longer a threat on scene. And so those will obviously take a longer bit of time. Again, very dependent on what our current workload is. So I hope that helps to explain why, in some cases you may be waiting longer than other people. It's kind of difficult to compare, but I hope that's helpful.
Can I just say
Thank
one
you,
thing?
Cap.
Am I on? Oh, then it seems like we should have people from the mental health side of things come talk to us. I'm not blaming the police on this. I just would like, a solution. That's what I want.
Hey, friend. So here's what we're going to do. That's a really great point, and that's something that we work on at VVCU. So we do gather a small group to address questions like what you have, which is a very good question. That's something that we could address because unfortunately we don't have anybody from DPH here. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to Mr. Ed Franklin. Sir, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, hello, committee members. My question is, okay, so I understand that this person assaulted an officer before and that he was released on a diversion program. How is it that violent acts like this are so easily released under these diversion programs? Is this a fault of the DA's office, or who is in charge of these diversion programs that they make to the extent that they deem an individual who violently assaults an officer, person in public, an elderly person, is deemed to be released under some type of diversion program? It just doesn't seem like it's accountable. I understand Bodine being a predecessor to the DA's department probably was a root cause, but it seems like it goes more in depth than this. You can kind of articulate what you want to say from there.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Any one of you gentlemen want to respond to that?
I should probably take a stab at it. With regard to diversionary programs, in the last couple of years, there has been a shift in the criminal justice system to diversionary programs, and there are a lot of very well-meaning legislation as well as individuals associated with it. 1001.36 of the Penal Code is what governs both felony and misdemeanor. It can be mental health diversion. It could be any type of diversion. And it doesn't per se exclude somebody based upon the nature of the assaultive conduct, unless it is a homicide or if the person is a sex registrant. There are a few other carve-outs that include sexual assault and crimes against children. But in general, there has been a shift towards diversionary programs, both in the Penal Code in California as well as in other states. So without a specific carve-out for any individual case, there may be cases where there are violent acts committed which may be eligible for diversion. So with regard to the specifics of this particular case, ACM, Assertive Case Management, is the vehicle that is used to assess the suitability of the individual for release and makes a recommendation to the court, and the court and the parties review that recommendation, and the needs are assessed, and the assertive case management folks well supervise the individual. Many of the decisions that are made in the criminal justice system, are made based upon prior conduct and whether or not somebody has a particular history, also the underlying conduct of each individual case. So those are sort of the factors that go into it. And I'm not sure that that's a satisfactory answer, but for everybody, but that is the reality, that there are charges that are assaultive in nature that can be sent to diversionary programs, both misdemeanor and felonious.
One other follow-up then. So if we want to stop this and kind of say, hey, look, I understand people with mental health issues being released, but when they're with violent mental health issues that are a general threat to the public, like this is not the first case. We well know that lady that was ran over in the middle of the night downtown, the Japanese woman who had a horrific death as her part. How do we stop this? Do we have to go to mayors? Do we have to go to the new DA? How do we say, look, diversion cannot be acceptable for people that are violent and continue to be violent under nature? They have to be incarcerated for a minimum amount of time, assessed while they're incarceration until they meet the needs of release. And I'm done.
I certainly understand that viewpoint, and there are, both legislative as well as initiatives that are taken up routinely, both through the state legislature and also through the initiative process in California. Proposition 115 was just such an initiative that was focused on victim rights and has for many years been the law in California that relates to victim rights and the like. So I certainly understand the frustration, I would encourage everybody, who feels as Mr. Franklin does, that we can address it through the statutory scheme and carve outs. But barring that, so long as there's a nexus between the conduct and the mental illness, there are mental health diversion programs that can be made available and referred by the courts.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Marin. I do want to remind everyone again, so please speak slowly because we do have translation service being provided. Are there any other questions for the speakers that we have here today with us? There are some folks that have typed up questions directly to me, but it looks like those questions have been answered. Selena, do you mind? You can just unmute yourself and ask that question.
Sure. I tried to chat you. I'm late, so I missed the initial discussion, if there was one, about what happened. So I don't have that backstory. But my question was, I keep hearing this theme about people who are dangerous individuals, sort of this rotating, revolving door situation. And I think that the solution, it can't just be the police. It's a multi-pronged solution. It has to involve politicians or mental health and the DA. It has to be a team effort. But I was wondering what would be the pros and cons? And I can think of some in my head, but I just wondered about if someone was released, what about if there was a community bulletin or an announcement that somebody who's been released out into the community? I'm sure there's some privacy issues. I'm sure it's very controversial, but does the community also have a right to know that somebody has been released out into the community that has been unsafe? For example, if there's somebody who is a sex offender, aren't there like announcements that are made, like if somebody's going to be living next door and if they have children or something? I mean, I know there's like some kind of an announcement that's made. Anyway, I know there's back and forth on it, but I would just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that is an intriguing prospect. The one distinction I would make with sex registrants or 290 of the penal code is that those individuals have actually been convicted. And so there is an element of, when there's simply probable cause, or when a case has been charged, there is a presumption of innocence. And that presumption controls until until guilt is established beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think the scenario that you are positing is possibly one that could be undertaken by the legislature, but I think it would require criminal conviction first before that type of notification. Now, that being said, in domestic violence cases and stalking cases and in assault cases, Marsy's law in California confers upon victims. When I say victims, I mean the named victims of crime. In this instance, it would be Officer O'Shea, who was the recruit officer, who have a right to know if an individual who assaulted them may be released. So I'm just making sort of two buckets. The one bucket is the 290 or sex registrant scenario would be a post guilt, and that would be something that would, I think, have to, I'm sure it would be litigated. And it's something that would be broader, and I think it would only be applicable after conviction. I think that you would have a lot of folks make that argument. And then with regard to named victims, there is a mechanism in place that allows those victims to be heard during the release decision, as well as notified if there is a release.
All right. Jenny 7S, please unmute yourself. Robert, are you able to unmute Jenny 7S for me?
I cannot unmute her, but I have asked her to unmute. And
Oh, I gotcha.
yeah, so she's not.
Okay, well, while she's doing that, Russell does have a question. SFPD, any suggestions for the community on how to protect themselves?
Yeah, so when I go to these meetings, I get a lot of questions that are kind of along that line, and generally I say, especially in this day and age where our staffing is where it is, we've become a little bit more, I would say, reactive than proactive. Unfortunately, and it's just the nature of the beast in terms of how we work our staffing. But as far as community protecting themselves, I really say organizing in the way that you kind of have already. But I really see a lot of success when neighborhoods, especially like at the block level, organize and get phone trees and have regular contact with their neighbors, in terms of things like break-ins or package theft. I've seen a lot of success where certain blocks organize and they're just that much more alert as to what's going on, right? Letting each other know, hey, I see something suspicious, or I see this going on, and notifying each other, and then making sure you call the police. Things like that are really helpful. A lot of the opportunistic crime is just that, right? It's based on what's kind of easy. So if an opportunist is going down a block and realizes that there's a lot of people that are paying attention to what's going on, it's just a path of least resistance type of thing. moving on. So that would be my suggestion. I'm a big fan of organizing from the block level.
Great. Thank you for that response, Captain. Jenny, are you able to unmute yourself now? Okay.
She is unmuted right now. Go ahead.
Okay, Jenny, you can ask your question.
Hello，因為我想問我想問咧，因為好似而家咁啦，發生喺我哋個7-11房谷嗰度啦，咁我哋而家好多嘅老人家啦出入啦，咁我哋大家而家嚟講咧，都不停咁出入嘅人都提心吊膽啦，咁我哋點樣佢哋警局咧點樣要辦法幫到我哋能夠咧把呢個心平靜落嚟？同埋點樣咧能夠教我哋點樣去面對到，如果真正嘅咧用會啱真係要個黐線嘅咧，有精神病嘅咧，咁我哋點樣去應付啊
？Yanis or Anna, are you able to？
同時咧，而家警局咧點樣可以幫到我哋咧？因為我哋而家咧呢個中心咧真係好多老人咧出入。同時咧，我哋7日喺呢度都要中心都要活動，咁嘅話咧，點樣可以平靜到我哋每個人嚟參與嗰個心情啊
？Okay, Anna or Yanis, could one of you guys translate that for us, please?
Okay, let's see. I'm going to see if
let's go with Kelvin first.
I believe it's because they're in the Chinese room, Anna and the rest of our clients and Yanis. That's probably why you may not be able to hear them. I can take a stab at it. I think Carrie might have heard it, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. For Jenny's question, it's basically, there's just a lot of people in our community. There's people with mental health issues and just things are unsafe. What can be done to protect them? Because they're law-abiding citizens, they're just going about their day. But when they're in the community where they feel unsafe, what can be done to protect them? Again, Carrie, you can correct me if I'm incorrect.
So you're talking about what can be done to protect the community?
Yes, sir.
From people with mental health issues.
Yes, and we're on a block that's literally like a few hundred feet away from where the homicide happened.
Maybe I need to chime in because I can understand what she was talking about. She actually mentioned the second point too. She mentioned about the senior in the neighborhood actually was quite uneasy. So she was asking how the senior can respond to this kind of situation when it happened.
Okay, that sounds like a public safety issue. Captain Liu, did you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So, I mean, just as far as what PD is doing, right? I mean, certainly on the heels of this incident, to the extent that I can, I've tried to step up high visibility patrol in Viz Valley, you know, kind of focusing in on the general area where the incident happened to try to, you know, restore the confidence there. That's number one. I think that in terms of, you know, groups of elderly that are concerned. So the one thing that I would say is don't be afraid to call the police. I can't guarantee that we have an officer on every single block at all times, right? It's just not going to happen. It's a fact of life. But they don't have, the message I try to send is you don't need to wait for a crime to happen to call the police. If there's something that you can articulate as being a concern to public safety, then please call us and we'll get out there. You know, so you can't call for, obviously, you know, when you're just guessing or hunches or things like that. But if there's something that you can articulate, like for example, the example that I give is we get calls on 911 all the time where there's someone casing a vehicle, right? So casing a vehicle for a break-in, you know, whether it's someone looking into a car suspiciously and, you know, maybe they have a tool in hand or whatever, that no one has to wait until a window is broken and something's stolen from that vehicle in order to call the police. So I would say the same thing. If there's someone that just gives you, you know, they're acting erratically, you don't have to wait until something bad happens until the police get called. So that would be one of my suggestions is please don't wait for something to happen. Articulate what you need the police there for, and we'll get out there.
Great, thank you, Captain. Kelvin, you have a question? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, my question is more so for the DA's office. I know the answer to my question is not going to be simple, but I know our community is looking for a more simplistic answer to understand how diversionary programs are necessarily triggered in an incident. So basically, let's say an assault happens, what is determined to get this person to a diversionary program? And also, based off what you had mentioned, it's unless that person commits homicide or is a registered sex offender, they won't go, they will be arrested. But if not so, like let's say it's simple assault, but it's over and over again, they will not be arrested, so to say, and they'll be taken to a diversionary program, and then more than likely they'll be released. So basically, repeat offenders are basically being let out over and over again. But I'm just trying to echo what our community has constantly asked us. Well, they're looking for a more simplistic answer than basically what exactly is law and why are there so many like people committing assaults or crimes over and over again around this area.
So it's a complicated question. I hope I can answer at least part of it. In terms of diversionary programs, when you have somebody who recidivates with assaultive conduct, so they have committed assaultive conduct, they've been referred to a diversionary program, maybe it's the first time this has ever happened, maybe there are no serious injuries, maybe the person has no criminal history that would suggest that this is sort of an aberrant act. This is not something that has happened before. So long as the clinicians can opine that there is a nexus between the conduct and a mental illness or an Axis 1 diagnosis, then on that first occasion, they could be eligible for diversion. Okay, they could be. Now, if somebody recidivates, like say that same individual we have now, and you mentioned the revolving door, and they come back having done this a second time, regardless of eligibility, we would be making the argument that this individual is simply not suitable for a re-referral to diversion. And so we do make those arguments routinely at the DA's office that even though the statutory scheme may say that somebody is diversion eligible, on this particular occasion, because of that person's history or because of the underlying conduct, we don't believe that they are suitable. So there's both an eligibility, which is statutory, and a suitability, which is more tailored to the individual. And hopefully to answer the question that if somebody, you know, before the door starts to revolve, we have made those arguments and hopefully persuaded a court that we should not take a second or third chance on an individual. I hope that partially answers your question. And if I missed something, please let me know.
Then I do want to follow up. Is the implication in a sense basically that diversionary programs don't necessarily protect the safety of our community, they just protect the suspect in question, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to believe that. The reason why is that if the individual can be treated, then that is, I think, helpful to aggregate safety, public safety, if they can be safely treated without, you know, incapacitating them for the rest of their natural life, right? By sending them to prison. You know, our system of justice, we simply, it simply does not occur, barring a few horrendous crimes. I mean, 99% of the individuals who are arrested and incarcerated will be released at some point during their natural life. And so the hope is that through 5150s, through the criminal justice system, through conservatorships, that, sort of all of these tools in the toolbox, we can address the individuals that are a one-off. Now, again, if somebody is recidivating again and again and again, to keep re-referring somebody is, some people would say the definition of insanity, right? Is to keep doing the same thing again and again, expect a different result. So I think that in the aggregate, the public safety benefits the most from identifying what the treatment need is of the individual for a first timer. And if that can be addressed, then addressing it. And if it can't because they do it again, then I think you need to incarcerate and act completely in the interest of public safety, because this individual has proven to the courts and proven to everyone that they simply cannot safely be released.
Great. So in the interest of time, it is 1 p.m. There are a couple more questions, but I'd like to ask the speakers if they're available for at least an additional 10 to 15 minutes, if that's possible. I understand we only scheduled this for 1 hour, not realizing that there would be more questions.
I can stay on, Rex, for 10 minminutes.
Yeah, thank you, Captain.
About 1 minute, if that's okay.
Okay, so
I have a question for the DA.
Yeah, could I I'm going to take it in this order. So Miss Cheryl Thornton was first, and then Miss Yu Liang, and then Jenny S has a question as well.
Okay.
Earlier it was mentioned, hi, this is Cheryl Thornton, and I'm a District 10 resident. And it was mentioned earlier that multiple, I guess, charges have been filed against this individual. So I guess my question is was one of the charges filed a hate crime charge?
I am aware of no hate crime charges that have been filed in this case.
Okay, Miss Yu Liang.
Yes, I actually just want to follow up to ask for Jenny 7, because she asked the questions for the seniors, and I heard Captain's answer. So my follow-up is that because those seniors were worried, and obviously they are not English speaking, right? So that's why they try to speak through Jenny 7. So I just want to make sure that the 911 dispatch center can efficiently transfer the call to a Cantonese speaking individual representative. Otherwise, it will be a little bit difficult for them to understand what's going on.
Yes, they have capabilities to get translators.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, and in addition to that, APAC, which I'm part of APAC, it's a community center, literally about 100 feet away from where this incident occurred. We have at least 4 bilingual Chinese speakers out there that can translate to the seniors. In fact, that's the reason why the captain called me immediately, so I can disseminate that information to my team members at the campus, so they wouldn't have to worry too much about what was going on. All right, Miss Jenny 7, and then we have a question from it'll be Gina Tobar after, and then Marlene Tran. Jenny, can you unmute yourself, please?
OK， 因為咧，我哋10月30號咧，我哋要嚟參加我哋唱歌嘅一位嘅成員咧，個會員咧，咁佢嗰日咧泊架車喺我哋喺第一係67號咁上下啦，泊到嗰個位置。 咁啊30號俾人打咗玻璃，當時咧我哋都要報警嘅，但係報咗警之後咧，佢你哋自己解決啦，我哋幫唔到我哋咁。咁然後咧到1號咧喺7-11嗰度咧就打死人啦，早上啦。咁啊死醒得嘅時間咧，真係同我哋打玻璃嗰一日嘅時間咧，唔係差唔多好遠嘅咋。我哋星期日係30號，第一我哋自己check 過個閉路電視，我哋睇唔到嗰個人。咁我哋去附近去自己附近嘅人問佢哋睇唔睇到咩人打玻璃咧？咁佢哋呢人個個都唔敢俾我哋。咁所以咧，我覺得呢件事咧，即係咪要打玻璃嗰個人同埋襲擊嗰個人係咪要拉連嘅咧？所以咧，我哋都好想清楚係咪同一個人。咁所以我希望咧警察咧可唔可以幫我哋調查下30號嗰日打玻璃嘅事。
All right. Anna, could you please translate for us? Well, I think she might be in a...
Yes, she is. Maybe you can translate again.
Yeah, maybe I can help out here. So she was asking that I think the 30th, right? 30th, October 30th, there was some incidents some window breaking, and then some people reported to the police, and I think they got a response as not much they can help because they couldn't know who did it. And because the time is so close to this incident, so they suspect that maybe two can be linked together. So they really hope that police can help them figure out if these two incidents are connecting. I think it really comes from the uneasiness from the neighborhood and the seniors. So that's what she was asking.
Thank you.
Did you mean that the window breaking incident, or do you know if Jenny meant that it was the window incident that was potentially linked to the homicide that we spoke to, or there are separate incidents that we're talking about here?
I think the seniors in the neighborhood was worried, and they want to know if the two were connecting, were done by the same person. I guess that's what she meant, because they tried to report to the police for the window breaking incidents, and then that was not resolved. And then this incident happened right at 7-Eleven. So they want to know if the two were done by the same person.
Okay, yeah, so just, from a very high 10,000-foot view level, I don't know. This is the first time I've heard of this particular, window breaking incident potentially being linked. So I don't know if this would have been the same person, but perhaps if Jenny can get me any kind of information, I can certainly, whether it's a CAD number, case number, I can pass it on to the homicide investigator and have them check that out as well.
Thank you.
All right, Gina, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gina Tobar. Thank you for extending the time a little bit. I have had some technical issues since I've signed in and out, and but I did hear some of the most of the police report and much of the DA's report. But I'm missing some things. And what has come to mind is I'm wondering how we as community members, if we're being attacked, what can we do in the moment where someone's violently attacking us to defend ourselves or to try to stop that person from harming us bodily without then being charged for assault in our own defense? And then another question is, does the DA hold public meetings or have some sort of online forum where community members can make comments on a message board directly to the DA, or an email that you receive comments from the community? So 2 questions.
So I will take well, first, the online forum. I have to confess, I don't know exactly within our office what shape that form would take. I did put my email address in the chat. So Ms. Tovar, if you wish, I'm happy to connect you with our community representatives.
Okay.
Who could answer that better than I can. So please feel free to reach out, and I will link you up. And then with regard to what you can do, everyone in California, everyone across this country has a right of self-defense. And so, you know, self-defense is, like most things, governed by the rule of reason, and you can use as much force as you're confronted with in general. But if you use excessive force, then you know, obviously that would not be a justifiable use of force. I'm speaking now in very general terms. You know, every case and every situation is different. I hope that, and I know that the police will respond very quickly when there is priority assessed on a run, and you know, hope to assist with that as well. But I just wanted to mention to everyone that, you know, everyone does have a right of self-defense, but hopefully we don't need to use it.
For example, when I have been in the Greenway and a person has threatened to kill me or has said, die, be, you know, some cuss words, what, I mean, obviously fleeing is the number one thing, but if I want to just stop the person, I guess it's a special case, and I don't know if that's appropriate for this forum at the moment.
Okay. So I believe, I think I know who you're referring to, Gina.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the DA did respond.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
thank you.
thank you, Gina. Marlene, please unmute yourself. Marlene, okay? There you go.
Okay, so thank you for extending the time. We are very shocked that, you know, this homicide happened in our community in such a gruesome manner. But we are also very sad that the clerk at 7-Eleven was assaulted. So we want to know how is he doing? And the second part has to do with the fact that since this site has been of great concern to the community, somehow because it's near bus stop and everything, it attracted all kinds of problems. So when I used to run the ESL classes in the evening at the Visitation Valley Community Center, I made sure that the police patrols included 7-Eleven. So my question is, because of this gruesome homicide, will 7-Eleven make any special accommodate or rather improvements in safety so that their staff and the community feel safer?
I'm not sure if you want to take a stab at that, Captain.
Sure, Rex. So as far as 7-Eleven goes, I mean, you know, so for PD, we've, again, like I said, we've increased our high visibility patrol out in the area, you know, on the post this incident to the best of our ability. As far as 7-Eleven individually, I know we've talked about adding cameras out there. Safe, in fact, called me today and said, hey, is there any way that we can get 7-Eleven to cooperate with allowing public cameras in that area? So those are some of the things that we're working on that may be able to help with some of the issues that go on there. But you know, again, we're not in a position to force them to do anything unless it reaches the level of maybe, you know, a city attorney, you know, constant nuisance or that sort of thing. I don't know if we reach those levels, and that's certainly a longer term thing that we can look at.
Great, thank you, Captain. We're going to take one more question. There's one hand up. and we're going to close off after Ms. Thornton's question. Ms. Thornton, please unmute yourself.
Okay, hi. So I guess my question is, was the victim, was this a Black man, Richard Owens? Can someone tell us that?
I don't have the race of the victim in front of me. So I don't know.
But you reviewed the case and didn't you see pictures of the victim? Was it a Black? I mean, you would know if it was a Black man.
So I did not review the homicide.
So what about anybody at the scene of the crime? No one knew if this was a Black man? The reason I bring this up is because I just find it very odd that in all these cases, usually the races are, you know, of the victims are you know, we are visible. And in this case, it's not. And it's almost as if, you know, I don't want to minimize this, but I mean, I know the victim at the 7-Eleven that was beaten up, it was Asian. And now we're hearing in the Black community, this was an Asian hate crime, but we want to know, was this a Black man that was killed? So how do I get that information? And where do I get it? Do I come down to the DA's office? How do I get that information?
You know, I think that if that is an area of interest for you, then I would recommend that you contact the homicide detail within the police department.
Why is it that you can't get back to me as a resident, as a in District 10, to let me know if the victim was a Black person?
So
why is it that the DA's office can't do that?
I would be happy to share the details that are public. I honestly would not share any investigative information of a homicide investigation without going through the assigned sergeant. And I'm happy to put you in contact with whoever that individual is. But it's not for me to release details of an ongoing investigation.
I don't know.
Okay.
Captain,
Because I do not actually have it. I don't know the answer as well. But I'm happy to put you in touch with the homicide sergeant, and he or she can follow up with you. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Do you want to put the name in the chat? The homicide.
I'm going to first have to. If you give me a moment, I might be able to tell you. Captain Liu, do you happen to know who went out?
You know what? There were a few investigators that went out. I'm not sure who the lead is. I think the best way to do it is to call the homicide detail if you want that information. I can try to get back to you with it. I don't. Again, I'm just kind of echoing what Dave was just talking about. You know, for us, for me, I don't release anything that goes above and beyond what's released from our PIO, meaning our public information folks. What I'll say is in terms of race. I wasn't going to address really race questions, specific race questions like that, other than to say that it is not being investigated as a hate crime. So that's kind of where we're at.
So Miss Thornton, so the captain typed in his email address. Perhaps you could email him with your information, and hopefully he can get back with you on the lead investigator.
Okay, if you give me the information, my husband's a retired SFPD. I'm pretty sure he has a lot of contacts. I can find out who it is, but if you could just give me the name of the, or the phone number.
Yeah, what they're Captain, do you have the phone number for homicide?
I can try to look it up real quick.
Or Ms. Thornton. So we've actually, what we'll do is, why don't you give our office a call, and one of our team members out there could give you that information.
Okay, can you put your number in the chat and I'll call you?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Let me see, hold on a second. All right, hey, Anna, could you please type in APAC's phone number on there?
All right, just also so people can see that Captain Lou put his email in there as well, so in the chat, so you can look that up. And as we're, well, go ahead, Rex, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, let's see. While we're doing that, while we're waiting for Anna to type that in, or Kelvin, please type in the APAC phone number so Ms. Thornton can get a hold of us, and we can get her the phone number for the homicide investigator. There it is. So you see it, Ms. Thornton. 415-587-2689. Again, I want to thank everyone, especially Captain Lou and Mr. David Marin from the DA's office. I also want to thank Supervisor Shaman Walton and his staff. If you are interested in the public safety things that they're working on, the Chief of Staff from Supervisor Shaman Walton does post and conduct a weekly meeting to talk about the public safety and what they're doing about it in District 10 as well. So they were able to secure some funding for us for District 10. So once again, if you're interested, you can go to their website at Supervisor Walton's office. I also want to thank Robert Cohen and my fellow VBCU board members for participating. I also want to especially thank the community members that's come out here today to your support and to ask all the questions from the SFPD and DA's office. I hope this was informative and helpful. And again, if you have further questions, both Captain Lou and Mr. Marion did type in their information. So with that said,
before we go, Rex, I just want to ask if there's anyone that is interested in being put on VBCU's mailing list for these kinds of conversations, please put your email in the chat, and so that way we can email you directly whenever we're having a town hall or providing information for the community. Go ahead and put your information in the chat and we'll record it and be able to contact you directly.
Yep. And if you're also interested in the Captain Lou's community meetings via Zoom, it's every third Tuesday of the month at 6:30 p.m. He does share a lot of things that are happening in his district, and if you have any particular concerns about your particular neighborhood, he is very informative. I've attended it many times. You could go into the Ingleside Police Station's website, and there is a link there. And he does have a monthly newsletter that he publishes out there to the community as well. That's available to everyone in the city or anyone, really any concerned citizen. All right. All right, Robert. Thank you very much, everyone. Once again, thank you, especially again for SFPD and the DA's office for participating and giving us this information. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got 3 emails from the chat.
Yeah, actually it's 4.
Okay, you got them?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, E. Franklin, Laura Torres, Selena L, and Liang Y.
Okay, got them.
Yeah. I don't see any others. All right. Thank you, everyone. About to end this.
All right. Send the link to the recording when you get it. I'll post it on Nextdoor and everywhere else.
Got it. All right.